anything. There'll be some noise. Kicks it, puts it into the back of the net.
Cameron can get loose. Easily evades Lever. Thought about the right. Swung it back on the left. The ball bounces perfectly for him.
Ends up with Cox. He'll kick. He'll go. And the crowd will roar.
Hello, I'm Damian Barrett. Welcome to Access All Areas. We are here thanks to Crypto.com. The defensively focused teams were eliminated in week 2 of the finals, Matthew Lloyd, which means attack is again king.
Oh, it's been a brilliant final series just for that reason, Damo. And I look at Melbourne's 2 finals. They lost the first one kicking 10 goals and they lost the second one kicking 11 goals. Just doesn't cut it in this year's final series. And then Fremantle, they kicked 9 goals on the weekend and just didn't look like scoring against Collingwood. So, yes, they're out, just weren't good enough this year.
The spectacle and the theatre attached to the attack has been a prominent part of the home and away season. It's playing out now in finals. And as we sort out the remaining teams left, Lordo, there is a theme, and you can see that you want to score to be in the pointy end.
So we've got 4 sides left and 2, 3 and 4 are still in it. So Brisbane ranked the number 2 scoring side, Geelong ranked number 3, Sydney ranked number 4, and the outlier there is Collingwood, who've won a lot of tight games this year. That probably could have gone either way, but
numbers just don't apply to that club on so many facets, do they?
No, they don't, and they deserve their spot. And they're right in this, Collingwood, to potentially win it.
Yeah, we saw them win a semi-final after losing the previous week, and that's all they failed to do the previous week against Geelong. Collingwood win the match. They did everything bar do that, but they controlled this game, Lordo. The final margin officially, by way of the scoreboard, was 20 points, but it was much more dominant than that, wasn't it?
Yeah, and they don't have a star forward. They don't have a Jeremy Cameron or a Tom Hawkins. They've just got all these different types of players.
And we're showing the rebound asset to this team.
We are, and they're playing with no fear, this side. They just don't have any fear. They're walking up the race before a game, laughing, joking, just having the time of their life. This is Jack Crisp, who I thought was best on ground.
You did, Lordo. You had him the best. Now, just take us through what he did. I mean, he's been doing it all season. He's about to play game number 200, 187 in a row. That's extraordinary in itself. But he's arguably getting better.
Hopefully we're not saying this next year again, but is he just about the most underrated player in the competition? He shouldn't be underrated anymore just for how good he is.
Won the Copeland last year, and I couldn't see why he wouldn't be prominent again. Now, you thought he was best. I thought this man, Jordan De Goey, was best. And there's a link there, obviously, with these 2 players. They came to Collingwood effectively out of the Dane Beams transaction to go to Brisbane. Chris came back as a player. The draft pick number was used by Collingwood to get De Goey. Lotto, the 2 finals he's played in 2022, they're elite, and not many players could have done what he has done in that qualifying final and again against Fremantle in the semi-final. You add those 2 performances to what he did in the entirety of the 2018 final series, we're talking competition best when it comes to the isolation of those 6 matches.
Yeah, it's just so good to see that he's just maximising his potential and the God-given talents that he has. And I think every touch means something for De Goey. So there's players who can get 35 and they're not as good as De Goey's 24 that he had on the weekend. So he's been the player of the final series so far.
Yeah, and kicking goals at crucial times. 2 last week, 1 this particular week. Lordo, this week's Brave Play of the Week for Crypto.com is this man here who drilled this goal just to give a semblance of hope late in the piece. David Mundy. It was game number 376. It was the final game of a career that started in round 6, 2005. Went out, as he was always going to, with class.
Yeah, absolute Rolls Royce. Just enjoy watching him. Had a smile on my face watching that last goal that he kicked because the game stopped for him. A lot like Pendlebury.
Yep.
Yeah, the game just stops for him. He never panics. He never. And the foot skills, arguably one of the best kicks inside 50 that you'll ever see. And clutch player, wasn't he? After the siren, if he had the ball, you'd think he's going to kick this one.
And while the romance was there, possibly about reaching 400 games, he's made the right call. There's a little bit left in the tank, and that's the best way to go out.
There's no doubt about it. I think that's they're moving on with Sarong and Brayshaw and those types of players that need those midfield minutes.
And they'll be forced to move on with the exits of other players too for other reasons, not retirement. Lobb, we expect to go to the Western Bulldogs. Griffin Logue is being sought by other clubs, including North Melbourne and Blake Acres. Carlton's got a lot of interest there. Liam Henry's name in the past week and a half, you're well aware of those possibilities around him. A top 10 draft pick as well. Already contracted for next year, but other clubs are keen.
It just shows the squeeze at Fremantle. They've got a lot of good young players. You know, Nathan Fyfe would still be on big money, and you've got Jack Jackson that will come in, Brayshaw, Sarong, they've got some stars, all over the field. So I don't think they lose too much from those players leaving. It'll hurt their depth, but I think they'll still be a good club next year.
Massive preliminary final now for Collingwood, going to the SCG to play Sydney. Now, they played, as we know, Lloyd, only a matter of weeks ago, round 22. The Swans broke their then 11-game winning sequence, the Pies, and they did it with how they used, partially at least, Ryan Clark on Nick Dacos.
Oh, he does it every week, Clark. You just know what you're going to get. And he went to Nick Dacos. Probably Dacos' worst game of the season was that game in round 22. 55 minutes together. Dacos had 12 disposals and went 20 minutes before he got his first disposal. That actually moved Dacos into a different role to move him away from Clark. So I look forward to this again, seeing it. He's been a star through the finals, Dacos,
Hasn't
again.
He? Yeah. So what happens? Is it just a lock that he goes to him?
Yeah, I think that if Dacos is on the half-back flank, it sets up beautifully for Ryan Clark to be able to go to him. But the positive about Dacos, he can go onto the wing, he can have moments after the centre bounce to go in midfield, he could send him forward.
So if you're Craig McRae, what do you do in that regard?
I think I'd still start him half-back because that's where he plays his best footy and it suits the team. But the moment he's been clamped down or he's not influencing, you can just move him into another role.
Yep. The aspect of the Swans play, Lordo, they've been going late in the season anyway with both McDonald and Franklin. Do you expect that to be the case? And before I get your answer on that, have a look at the stats that they produced against Melbourne in the qualifying final with those two players.
Yeah, I think McDonald is really vulnerable, and we want to listen to John Longmire, what he's had to say during the week, and give my response to why McDonald may lose his spot.
Yeah, it's probably something to wait until we work out what the team that we're playing looks like, and things like weather and those type of things. We sort of, we've had a fairly stable lineup for a number of weeks now, and I guess it's the benefit of that versus any tweaks that we need to make according to the opposition and maybe the weather. And so that'll be in the back of our mind for next week.
So that was before John knew he was going to be playing Collingwood. And I just think the way the ball pings at the SCG, the pressure that you need in your forward 50, that maybe they only need Reid and they only need Franklin, go with Smalls around. Right. So I think Braden Campbell could potentially come in for Logan. That's just an opinion of mine. He may go the other way, but I'd go smaller.
So horses for courses with Collingwood, change that dynamic.
With the way they have all six defenders, Quayne Orn, Johnny Noble, Nick Dacos, Darcy Moore, Braden Maynard and Jeremy Howe. You need pressure players all over the field. Yeah,
interesting dilemma to have. What, before we move off that game, would the Swans be best suited to do with Jordan De Goey?
Well, I don't think Rowbottom would be a good player, actually. James Rowbottom, just to go with him, pressure him around stoppage.
Do you think of Clark changing off Dacos to De Goey?
Not because you just don't want Clark in the centre bounce. So potentially after the ball moves, but I doubt they'd go down that track. Yeah.
Brisbane's been fantastic this final series, Lordo. They had hoodoos going into the finals this year. One of those was being able to win finals full stop. They were 1-5 prior to this series under the Chris Fagan watch, and they then also weren't able to win full stop at the MCG. Well, they've broken both those hoodoos in consecutive weeks, and the manner in which they retrieved a 28-point just before half-time deficit against Melbourne in this semi-final, Lordo, was very meritorious.
What I'll say is their pressure, I've never rated them as a tough pressure side, but it was the toughest Brisbane performance I've seen in a number of years, and it complemented this. So they were brutal with their physicality on Melbourne, and then their class shone. So their confidence just grew as the second half went on and just overpowered. At three-quarter time, the scores were level, but you thought how far Brisbane with how good they were in that third quarter.
And weirdly, the adversity that they've been subjected to has worked for them. The adversity came in the first final when Oscar McInerney went down in the first 90 seconds of play, and they had to have a makeshift ruck. The adversity into the semi-final was Joe Danaher pulling out on game day for private and personal and baby-related reasons. But it meant that Eric Hipwood had some space that he wouldn't have otherwise had.
Yeah, he and Charlie Cameron, I thought, got more ball kicked to them without Joey Danaher. So you look at Eric Hipwood and just the amount of space that he's got, and he realises there's no Joey Danaher, so the ball's going to be coming through me, and his movement was first class. He's come off a knee reconstruction, so we shouldn't forget just how hard that is to come back from as a key forward.
And you're highlighting here the space he was given.
The space he was given, more ball coming through him, which we'll see very shortly. And
so what should the Demons be doing here? Blocking that space?
I think so, yeah. So they fell apart. You can just see there that Hipwood had too much space to move into. He's a player you've got to keep touch on, you've got to keep body on. And apart from the first 15 minutes where May got a hold of him, he was sensational.
So Daniher comes back in. I mean, that's an absolute given. But how will it affect what worked so successfully against Melbourne when he's back?
Oh, I think you're right. They've discovered a lot. You know, Jared Lyons going out, Darcy Wilmot coming in with speed has been really good. Devon Robertson has been good for them. So I think he has to use the bench really smartly. At times, put McStay in the ruck, get McInerney off, go smaller, even get Joey into the ruck, just to try and keep maximising what they worked out so well with Cameron and Hipwood in that forward line on the weekend.
It took a lot of people to realise that Melbourne wasn't playing well, Lloyd. You were onto it early. Now, the 6 wins only that they had after the round 10 start of the season, you were all across it as it was unfolding. And you've been worried about several aspects of their game, including an area of the ground that was once considered almost unbeatable, that being the defence.
Yeah, well, this has always held up for them, but on Friday night they were exposed for ground level. So they're so good in the air, but at ground level, look at this, Stephen May. We haven't seen May panic like that all year.
That was panic.
That was panic. This one here, Trent Rivers, just panic again, holding the ball when they were in front. And I thought Lever's very good in the air, but they got him up high up the ground and made him, his turning circle, it looked really poor. He's had knee reconstructions too.
He doesn't want to be in this situation right now, on centre wing, chasing someone who's got wheels when he needs to.
Yeah, and same thing. Look at Hibberd scrambling on the last line of defence on Charlie Cameron. So ground level, they were exposed in their defence, which, as I said, aerial great, but ground level they were exposed.
And the other part of the ground, which has long been known as a problem for Melbourne, has been forward, and it was not good, was it? Again, on the weekend.
No, they'll get Tom McDonald back, which will help. Ben Brown, I worry about Ben Brown. Just he's so slow across the ground, can't really turn. Melsham had a poor final series. Jackson will be gone. Gawn doesn't suit him. The
Gawn was injured though, Lordo, and we know
Yep.
we know he's been probably having and carrying a groin for probably 2 months or thereabouts.
Yeah, Fritsch wasn't as good. Spargo disappointing. So I think that they'll have to look. It's about method as well for Melbourne. It's not just about the players that they've got there.
Yeah, and the method they just weren't able to capitalise on this man, Luke Jackson. Had that nice moment in the third quarter there where he set up a goal chance. But Lordo, he had 1 mark last week in a qualifying final. He had 1 mark again on the weekend in a semi-final. 2 marks for the final series. He's finished 2022 behind where he was finishing 2021.
And it's going to be fascinating if he does go to Fremantle how they use him, because Sean Darcy's purely a ruckman and he's one of the best ruckmen in the comp. So I'm not sure how they're going to use Luke Jackson and Darcy together. He
slipped, I think, quite markedly this year. Others at Melbourne also did too, Lotto. These rankings, now just by way of comparison, the champion data player ratings out of a game, these are averages in brackets from last year. This is this year on the left of that. And out of the Collingwood game on the weekend, both De Goey and Crisp had their numbers in the 20s on these rankings.
Yeah, I thought Salem was a shadow of himself, particularly on Friday night in that final. Spargo's dropped off, Jake Lever had dropped off. So it's symbolic of Melbourne's season. After round 10, where they were 10-0, they never really got going. 6 wins, 8 losses. And they'll lick their wounds and have to come back a different group next year.
It's not a given they get back up the ladder, is it?
Oh, it's just a tough, ruthless competition. I'd love to know how much of it they lost their hunger, how much they were worked out. I think it's a combination of everything.
Jared Berry was extraordinary in the second half for Brisbane in their semi-final win, Lotto. He's got to contend with this. We know how this plays out. He goes to the Tribunal tomorrow night, that being Tuesday, for this hand around the eye region of Clayton Oliver. They'll defend it along the grounds that what else are you meant to do other than putting your hands up in that situation? And I can understand that defence. It won't be a given, but as we've seen, you can then get another set of legal people in the appeals tribunal part of it to also have a look. So they'll just wade their way through the system until they get a set of lawyers who agree with them, won't they?
Yeah, it didn't look great with the motion of that raking motion, but as I said, he's in a vulnerable position. And he may well get it downgraded to be able to play. Yeah.
He was fantastic against Oliver, wasn't he, in that second half? I think he was match winning in the way he played it. Who will he get this week if he gets through the tribunal?
Well, Cameron Guthrie's one that teams do go after, but I actually love to go after Joel Selwood in a final. So when Joel Selwood loses his way and gets frustrated and angry, I think it can affect Geelong. It can affect everyone around him.
Yep.
So it'd be an interesting one to go after the skipper, I would have thought.
The Lions chose to clamp down on Oliver in the second half, whereas Melbourne chose to just remove the shackles on Lachie Neale to disastrous effect. I mean, Brayshaw had him for the first half and then he got away.
He had 9 touches in the first half, only 3 effective disposals on Brayshaw. And I understand what Goodwin was doing. He says, OK, we need a bit more of a spark, so let's get Brayshaw into the game and let's put Tom Sparrow on him. But I think they made the wrong move there in the end because he just had such a big effect. And this is as good a play as you're likely to see how clean that is. The cleanest player in the AFL competition, Lachie Neale.
Yeah, it's incredible passage of play there. Does Mark O'Connor for Geelong get him on the weekend, do you think?
Yeah, I remember when Chris Fagan and Chris Scott lost their way at each other, remember, on a Friday night down in Geelong. It was a round of tactics of Lachie Neale, and Mark O'Connor does a good job on him, so I think that's a perfect matchup.
That will again be a storyline this week, won't it? Tyson Stengel, All-Australian player this year, Lordo. Let's just break down what he's done, though, against the teams in the varying parts of the ladder. There's no worry there jumping off the screen, but it just shows a lot of his goals came against the teams lower on the ladder than the teams he's facing in the finals. And he's only got one goal against the remaining 3 teams in this final series, and that's across 4 matches. Early in the season, rounds 2, 3 and 4, and also the qualifying final. 1 goal only against those remaining 3 teams.
Amazing numbers, and went goalless against Collingwood in the first final. So every player wants to stand up in the big games. He's had a brilliant year, All-Australian, but he wouldn't like those numbers, and he'd be well aware of that he has to have a better one this week.
Who have you got? Friday night, Geelong versus Brisbane.
I'm confident Geelong win that one.
And Saturday night, Sydney, Collingwood.
I'm going to go with the Swans. It's a safer pick, but I wouldn't surprise me if Collingwood beat them. But I'm tipping a Sydney-Geelong grand final.
I've got both those selections too, Lordo, for what it's worth. Your brave finals moments for Crypto.com continues on AFL.com.au this week. And stay with AFL.com.au and the AFL Live app for all the news you need to know heading into the preliminary final weekend of the 2022 AFL season. We'll be back next week with more Access All Areas.